My brother inherited everything, and now he wants my help. Let me start this off by saying I never planned to air my family's dirty laundry online, but after everything that's happened, I need a place to get this out. Maybe it's for closure. Maybe it's to stop myself from doing something I'll regret. Or maybe, just maybe, I'm hoping someone out there will say, yeah, I've been there. I know how it feels to be betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you the most. This all started 3 years ago, when my dad died unexpectedly of a heart attack. He wasn't a perfect man, but he was my hero. A Vietnam vet, a self-made business owner, and the kind of guy who still opened doors for strangers and called everyone sir or ma'am. He raised me, and my younger brother, Adam, on discipline, hard work, and Sunday morning pancakes. My mom left when we were kids, and I picked up the slack. I was 7 when I learned how to make boxed mac and cheese because Adam wouldn't stop crying. I was 12 when I started helping Dad with invoices at the family hardware store, just so he could get some rest. I was 24 when I turned down a promotion at my marketing job in Seattle to move back to our hometown in Vermont and help Dad run the store after he slipped and broke his hip. Adam? He was always different. He was smart, like scary smart but slippery. He knew how to charm adults and twist things so that he always looked innocent, even when he wasn't. I used to cover for him in school, lie to Dad about where he was, even take the blame when he wrecked the truck sneaking out to a party. I told myself I was just being a good big sister, that one day he'd grow out of it. He didn't. When Dad passed, I handled the funeral. I organized everything, from the obituary to the burial plot beside our grandparents. Adam didn't even fly in until an hour before the service, hungover and sunglasses on in the middle of January. I chalked it up to grief. We were all hurting. Then came the will. I remember sitting in that stuffy little lawyer's office with its ugly carpet and antique clock ticking so loud I could barely think. Adam looked bored, scrolling through his phone. I hadn't even considered there'd be anything in the will for me. I'd always assumed the store would be split between us. We were the only kids, after all. It's what Dad had always said. Except it wasn't. Dad had rewritten the will 3 months before he died. He left everything, the store, the house, the savings, the land, even the insurance, to Adam. And me? I got $1. One single dollar. As in, I didn't forget you. I just didn't want you to have anything. I remember the lawyer handing me the will like it was a tissue. Adam didn't even look at me. He just grinned and said, "Guess Dad finally figured out who the real success story was." Huh? I walked out of that office in a fog. I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. For days, I tried to convince myself there had to be a mistake. Maybe Dad was pressured. Maybe Adam had lied. Maybe there was a second will. But the lawyer assured me everything was legal. Ironclad, he said, just like my father's jaw when he was angry. I moved back to Seattle and cut contact with Adam. I didn't go to the store again. I didn't check on the house. Couldn't. Not after everything I gave up for Dad. The job, the years, my entire 20s. I buried my grief in work and therapy and tried to forget that my brother had taken everything and never looked back. I might have been able to let it go. Until last week, when Adam showed up at my door, 3 years later, unannounced, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my rent and flashing that same smug grin he wore at the will reading. "I need your help," he said. And that, dear Reddit, is when the real story begins. Update 1. My brother's empire is crumbling and he wants me to save it. So let's pick up where I left off. I open my door in the middle of a rainy Tuesday evening, and there's Adam, in a tailored navy suit, shoes so polished I could see my stunned reflection in them, and carrying a leather briefcase like some finance bro cliché. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. Not a call, not a message, not even a birthday text. He looked older, sharper around the eyes, like life had either humbled him or turned him even more ruthless. I stepped back and instinctively crossed my arms. "I need your help," he said again, softer this time. I didn't say anything, just stared. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face, but curiosity, and, let's be honest, a flicker of spite, kept me standing. He went on. "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't serious. I let him in, not because I forgave him, God no, but because I wanted to see how far the golden child had fallen. We sat in my living room. I didn't offer him tea or water. He didn't ask. He looked around like he was judging the IKEA furniture and thrifted decor, but I could tell he wasn't comfortable. His left leg kept bouncing. His nails were bitten down. He was rattled. Finally, he dropped the bomb. The store's failing. I'm broke, and I'm being investigated. I laughed. Couldn't help it. That bitter, half-crazed laugh that bubbles out when you've been waiting years for karma, and it finally arrives wearing Gucci. But then I saw something I never expected from Adam. Desperation. He told me everything, or at least what I could squeeze out of him before he got too defensive. Turns out, the moment he inherited Dad's assets, he took out a massive business loan against the property to modernize the hardware store. Except instead of upgrading the infrastructure or expanding inventory, he dumped it into cryptocurrency, a boutique gym franchise, and a half-baked app development startup with some guy he met in Cancun. All three ventures failed. Hard. The store, neglected and understaffed, lost its regulars. The employees Dad had trained for decades quit in waves. Adam brought in contractors to automate the POS system and install self-checkouts. But they botched the electrical and triggered a fire inspection that nearly shut it down. By the time he realized he was in over his head, it was too late. He defaulted on the business loan. The bank's knocking. The insurance money's gone. And now a former employee is suing him for wrongful termination and wage theft. "So why the hell are you here?" I asked. His answer floored me. "Because you're the only person who actually knew how to run it. Dad trained you. You kept it alive for years. You loved that store." I stared at him, waiting for the apology, the remorse, even a hint of gratitude. Instead, he had the audacity to say, "I need you to come back and fix it, just for a few months. Help me turn it around. Then we split whatever's left." I almost threw him out right then. This man took everything from me. Years of caretaking, sacrificed job opportunities. The last words I said to my father were about picking up drywall from a supplier. I never got to tell him goodbye, and then Adam erased me from his legacy like I was a smudge. And now he wants my help? I told him I'd think about it. He left reluctantly, muttering something about timelines and foreclosures. But here's the thing, Reddit. Part of me does want to go back. Not for him, never for him, but for Dad. For the people who worked at that store like it was their second home. For the customers who used to call me by name. For that small town that deserves better than what my brother gave them. And maybe, just maybe, for revenge. If I do this, I'll do it my way. I'll dig into the finances. Find out just how deep the hole is. Reconnect with old employees. Rebuild the store from the ashes. And then, when it's profitable again, when it's strong and thriving, I'll take it from him. Legally. Strategically. Completely. The same way he took it from me. Update 2. Turns out Adam wasn't the only snake in the garden. I've been back in Vermont for a week. Just 1 week, and I already feel like I've stepped into a graveyard where the bodies are still warm. The town's changed, not on the outside. Main Street still has the same faded diner sign, the same cracked sidewalk outside Merrill's bookshop, the same rusty swing set in front of the park. But the people, they look at me like I'm a ghost, like I abandoned them. Or worse, like I was him. Because when Adam ran Dad's legacy into the ground, he didn't just torch a building. He scorched relationships. Let me rewind. I told Adam I'd come back on my terms. He said he'd give me full access to the books and the staff schedules and stay out of my way. But within 2 hours of showing up at the store, I found out he'd already told the remaining staff I was there as a consultant. Not co-owner, not partner, not savior. Just a consultant. Only 2 employees remain. Roger, who used to work part-time under Dad and now looks like he's aged 20 years and 3, and Kelsey, a 20-year-old cashier who's barely hanging on because she needs the hours to pay rent. The others? They left when their paycheck started bouncing, including Maggie, who'd been the inventory manager for over 15 years and treated me like a sister. I called Maggie. She didn't answer. But later that night I found out why. I was sitting in Dad's old office going through the store's accounts, which, by the way, are a disaster. Like I'm surprised the IRS hasn't camped on the roof kind of disaster. when I heard the bell over the front door ring. It was after closing. I peeked through the slatted blinds and saw her. Maggie. Except she wasn't alone. She was with a man I didn't recognize, mid-40s, sharp suit, clipboard. They were walking the aisles like realtors. She pointed at fixtures. He nodded and took notes. I waited until they turned a corner, then slipped out and confronted them. "Maggie," I said, like I wasn't furious and confused and a little heartbroken. She froze. "Oh, I didn't think you'd be here this late. Who is this?" I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. The man stepped forward and introduced himself as Timothy Graves, a regional acquisitions manager for Stewart Supply Corporation, a national home improvement chain that's been swallowing up independent hardware stores like a damn black hole. Maggie wouldn't look me in the eye. "They're planning to buy the store. My family's store. Adam approached them 6 months ago, after his last loan defaulted, and they've been in talks ever since. The only reason the deal hasn't gone through yet is because the building zoning paperwork is a mess and Stewart Corporation doesn't want to inherit the legal fallout." I asked Maggie why she was helping them. Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones. And I hated how that still affected me. "Because I can't keep watching this place rot," she said. "Your father built something good. Adam's letting it die. Stewart will at least keep some of the employees. Keep the doors open. Maybe not under your name, but still open." I wanted to scream, not because she was wrong, but because she might be right. But I also saw something she didn't. Opportunity. If Stewart Corporation is circling, it means the store still has value. And if I can fix the zoning issue before the sale goes through, I might be able to block the deal entirely, or buy Adam out before they do. But here's the kicker. I don't have the cash. Not yet. And that's when the next betrayal hit me. Back at my rental, I logged into my old savings account, the one tied to the hardware store. Dad used to keep a safety cushion there. Money that wasn't in the main business account, but there in case something catastrophic ever happened. It was emptied, down to the last cent. And guess who had power of attorney before Dad's death? Adam. I don't have proof yet. Not real proof. But if I can trace the withdrawals and show that Adam misused funds, possibly even before the will was changed, it might open a legal door to contest the will entirely. A long shot, I know, but it's one I'm willing to take. So here I am, living in a half-furnished Airbnb, running a dying store with 2 exhausted employees, trying to fight off a corporate takeover, and piecing together a financial mystery that may prove my father's legacy was stolen long before the will ever hit a lawyer's desk. And Adam? He has no idea, I know. But he will. Update 3. My father's signature, a forgery, and the woman I never thought I'd see again. If you had told me a month ago that the next major twist in this entire mess would involve my mother, I would have laughed in your face. My mother. The same woman who walked out on us when I was 10, who left behind nothing but a half-packed suitcase and a note scribbled on a napkin. Hasn't been in our lives in over 20 years. Adam and I used to pretend she was dead. It was easier than wondering why we weren't enough for her to stay. But this past week, as I dug deeper into the store's financial records, I found something that made my stomach twist into knots. It started when I visited a local CPA who used to do part-time work for Dad. Nice older guy named Ed, someone I remember seeing around the store during tax season. I asked if he had any of Dad's archived documents. He hesitated at first, but when I told him what I suspected, that something was off about the will, that Adam might have done more than just spend money he didn't earn, Ed agreed to let me look through old files. There, buried under a stack of quarterly statements, was a document labeled Amendment Living Will, September 2020, 3 months before Dad died. The exact date Adam had mentioned when the lawyer read the will. But here's the thing. Dad's signature on that amendment? It didn't match. I'd seen his signature 100 times. On my report cards. On birthday cards. On the bottom of every paycheck he handed me when I worked at the store full-time. He had the stubborn curl at the end of the R in his last name. A flourish he never skipped, no matter how rushed. The signature on the amendment was stiff, careful, and lacked that curl. I took it to a handwriting analyst. Not a random one, someone recommended by the CPA. She wasn't cheap, but she was thorough. And after a few days of review, she sent me a written report stating, and I quote, "There is significant evidence to suggest the signature in question was forged by someone with moderate familiarity of the subject's handwriting, but lacking fluidity and pressure consistency typical of natural execution. In other words, forged. That should have been enough to go to a lawyer. But I hesitated, because guess whose name was listed as a witness on the amendment? Lillian Sharp, my mother. I stared at that name until the letters stopped making sense. I hadn't spoken to her since I was 15 and tried to track her down after a bad breakup. She never responded. No calls, no emails, nothing. And now suddenly she's back, tied to the document that robbed me of everything? I confronted Adam. I walked into the store while he was meeting with some local rep about supplier contracts. I didn't wait for introductions. I tossed the report on the counter and said, "Care to explain why our deadbeat mother's name is on the will that gave you everything?" His expression didn't change. Not even a flicker. That's what scared me the most. "She reached out to Dad," he said. "Before he died. They talked. Reconnected. He forgave her." I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're saying Dad, the same man who refused to let us even mention her name, suddenly welcomed her back with open arms and made her a witness to his will?" Adam shrugged. "People change." "No, not our father. Not like that." I asked if he had proof, emails, letters, anything. He said the conversations were private, that they were just trying to make peace. When I pressed him again, he got defensive, started throwing my past in my face. "You left too," he snapped. "You moved to Seattle. You chose your career over this family. Don't act like you were some saint." That's when I realized something chilling. He's been preparing for this moment. He knew I'd eventually come back. He had stories ready, explanations, alibis. So I did the one thing I knew would rattle him. I told him I was getting a lawyer, that I had the handwriting analysis, that if I could prove the signature was forged and the will tampered with, the entire document could be thrown out, and Dad's previous will, the original one where we shared everything equally, could be reinstated. His smile faltered. For the first time since this all started, Adam looked scared. But I wasn't done. I contacted a private investigator. I want to find my mother, not to reconnect, not for some teary reunion, but to look her in the eye and ask her if she helped my brother forge a dying man's will. And if she did, I'll make sure they both face consequences. The kind that burn through reputations, wallets, and whatever scrap of family they think they still have. Update 4. I found her, and what she told me changed everything I thought I knew. I got the call on a Friday morning. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours the night before. My mind was a carousel of half-buried memories and angry hypotheticals. The private investigator, Tom, had a voice like gravel and rain. Real noir type, ex-cop energy. He kept it short. "She's in Rochester. Lives alone. Goes by Lillian Carter now. Divorced twice. You want the address?" I didn't answer right away. I don't know why. Maybe I was still that 10-year-old kid, holding that crumpled napkin note, wondering what he did wrong. But rage cuts through hesitation faster than grief ever can. I told him yes. I drove 4 hours that night. I didn't tell anyone. Not Kelsey, not Roger, not even the lawyer I was working with now to build a case against Adam. It felt like something I had to do alone, like a final boss battle at the end of a game I never wanted to play. She lived in a modest duplex, brick exterior, wind chimes on the porch. It was too normal, too quiet. I wanted the setting to match the storm I was bringing to her door. She opened it after the third knock. Same hair, just grayer. Her eyes widened. I think she knew exactly who I was. She didn't say my name, just stared at me like she'd been expecting a ghost, not flesh and blood. "I need to talk to you," I said. She let me in without a word. We sat in her kitchen. There was a mug half full of tea on the table and a crossword puzzle beside it. I remember her doing those when I was little, like muscle memory, watching her fill in squares while the world fell apart around us. Then I dropped the bomb. "I found your name on Dad's will amendment. From 2020. As a witness. Was that your signature?" She flinched. Her hand went to her tea, but she didn't drink it. "I didn't think Adam would actually go through with it," she whispered. That's when my breath caught, because just like that, the cracks began to show. She told me the truth, at least her version of it. According to her, Adam reached out to her in 2019, said Dad was sick, said I'd abandoned the family. He played the wounded son role perfectly. She hadn't spoken to either of us in decades, but guilt is a funny thing. It keeps the door unlocked for manipulation. Adam invited her to visit, said Dad wanted to see her. But when she arrived, Dad was already in the hospital, barely responsive. She only saw him once, unconscious, hooked to machines. It was Adam who pushed the papers in front of her, told her it was just a legal formality, and Dad had already signed. She swears she didn't know what she was signing. "He told me it was about estate taxes," she said. "Said it would help keep the business running." I asked her why she never asked questions, why she didn't call me, why she vanished again the second she'd done her part. She started crying. Not the dramatic, messy kind, just silent tears that pooled on her lap. "I didn't know how to face you," she said. "I thought if I stayed away, it would hurt less. But it didn't." I told her about the forged signature, the debt, the betrayal, the lies. I laid it all out like a crime board in a detective show. She didn't interrupt, just listened, her face pale and crumbling. And then, she did something I never expected. She offered to testify. "I can sign an affidavit," she said. "Say I was misled, that I never saw your father sign anything. If it helps your case, I owe you that much." I was stunned. And then suddenly, I was 10 again, wanting her to reach across the table and just hold me. Tell me it would be okay. But the years between us had grown too thick. Still, I took her up on the offer. We met with my lawyer 2 days later. She signed a sworn statement, detailed everything Adam told her, every manipulation, every lie. My lawyer says it's strong. Combined with the handwriting analyst's report and the discrepancies in Adam's financial records, we may have a real shot at nullifying the will amendment entirely. Which means if this works, I could take back half the business, half the assets, half of everything. But I don't want half. I want him ruined. My lawyer suggested we consider a full civil suit. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse. If the DA sees enough evidence, Adam could face criminal charges too. Jail time isn't off the table. I thought I'd feel conflicted about that, but I don't. Because today, I went to the store and found Kelsey crying behind the counter. The electric bill hadn't been paid. Again. And she got a disconnection notice. Adam was in New York, business trip, according to him, but his credit card history showed a $900 dinner at some rooftop steakhouse. That was all I needed to finally say it out loud. I'm not just here to rebuild the store. I'm here to burn down every lie my brother ever told, and make sure he never gets to rebuild anything from the ashes. Final update coming soon. And trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Final update. The truth, the trial, and the ashes of my brother's empire. I never thought I'd see Adam in an orange jumpsuit. That's not hyperbole. That's not dramatic flair. That's me standing in the back of the courtroom, watching the man who spent the last 3 years pretending to be a grieving son and responsible heir while he gutted everything our father built. The business, the reputation, our family, being let out in cuffs. But let me rewind, because everything that led to that moment was a whirlwind of legal chaos, emotional landmines, and more betrayal than I thought possible. After my mother's sworn affidavit and the handwriting analyst's report, my lawyer filed a formal petition to contest the will amendment in probate court. That alone was enough to freeze the pending sale to Stewart Corporation, which, by the way, Adam was still trying to push through, even after everything came to light. We subpoenaed his bank records. We got access to the store's internal financials. We traced the funds from the emergency account Dad had set aside, the one Adam emptied, to a series of personal expenses. Luxury travel, crypto gambling, even payments to a woman in Miami who turned out to be his mistress and fake consultant. He listed her as an operations advisor for the store and paid her $6,000 per month from our father's money. But the worst part? We found forged invoices. Dozens of them. Adam created fake vendors, fake companies, and funneled money through them back to his personal accounts. It wasn't just inheritance theft anymore. It was full-blown fraud, and once we had the evidence, we went straight to the authorities. That's when everything snowballed. The state attorney general got involved. The IRS opened a case. Turns out Adam hadn't just been screwing me. He hadn't paid sales tax correctly in 2 years. He'd been estimating payments based on altered numbers. The accountant he fired after Dad died had apparently warned him, but he told her to keep her mouth shut or lose her license. She came forward after reading about the case in the local paper. Bless her. By the time the preliminary hearing came around, Adam's lawyer was doing damage control while mine just sat there handing over damning document after damning document. The judge ordered a full audit. I was granted temporary conservatorship of the business. When we found the original will, the one that left the estate equally to both of us, still on file at the lawyer's office Dad used for years, the court froze Adam's access to all business accounts. He didn't even show up to the second hearing. He was arrested in Manhattan, trying to withdraw $15,000 in cash from a previously unknown account under a different name. He had an alias, a damn alias. Turns out he was planning to run. Booked a one-way flight to Belize. Guess he figured he could start fresh somewhere tropical. Instead, he got extradited back to Vermont in shackles. He's facing multiple felony charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and falsifying legal documents. His bail was denied because the judge called him a substantial flight risk. That phrase will never stop making me grin. But here's the part that really got me. At the sentencing hearing, he tried to speak. He stood there, shackled at the wrists, and actually tried to justify it all. Said I abandoned the family, that he kept the store afloat, that Dad was going to give him everything anyway, and the amendment just made it official. No apology. Not one. He even tried to blame our mother. Said she knew what he was doing, that she signed off on the plan. She was sitting in the courtroom that day. I watched her stand, slow and composed, and walk out before he finished his sentence. She didn't even look at him. That told me everything. The judge sentenced him to 7 years, with possibility of parole after 4. He'll probably serve less, but even if he walked out tomorrow, the damage is done. His name's ruined. His finances are gone. His mistress bailed the second he was indicted. Stewart Corporation pulled out of the acquisition deal completely, and I finalized paperwork to take sole ownership of the business under my name. And the store? It's alive. We rebranded. New signage, fresh coat of paint, a community fundraiser that brought in more support than I ever imagined. We renamed it Sharp Tools and Home, to honor Dad, to remind everyone whose legacy this really is. Roger stayed. Kelsey got promoted. Maggie even came back part-time. Said she wanted to see how the story ends. And for once, it feels like the story isn't ending in betrayal, but in something like healing. I won't lie, I'm still angry. I still wake up some nights thinking about how close I came to losing everything. Not just the business, but my trust in people, in family. But I also remember the last thing Dad said to me before he got sick. We were arguing about something stupid, taxes or store hours or my decision to move, and he looked at me and said, "This place will be yours someday. Don't let it turn you cold." I didn't understand what he meant back then. I do now, and I won't. Thank you for stepping into another tale with me. Every story unlocks a different world, and I'm glad you were here for the journey. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my stories Unchained, where every ending is just the beginning of another adventure. Until next time, keep your mind open and your heart ready for the next story, Unchained.